Good morning, class. Welcome back. I know we had a long 3-day weekend, but hopefully you're ready to get going this morning as we talk about a lesson that we've addressed before on adapting your speech. But I think it's a good idea that we go over it again. Some of you were a little bit confused about some of the topics, and so we're going to focus in on adapting your speech. So let's talk about that in light of what the standard is that we're covering. We're talking about speaking and listening. So this particular standard looks at how we adapt our speech in a variety of contexts and in different tasks. We want to demonstrate a command of formal English when it's indicated or appropriate. So that sounds fancy, but really what we're doing is thinking about how we speak and how this affects how we listen to other people. So it's speaking and listening. So let's take a look at some of the slides, and we're gonna talk about the concept, and then we're going to practice the concept, and then you're going to go home and you're going to practice it some more, because we really want to understand how speaking and listening affects the ways that we clearly communicate with people. So let's take a look at the next slide. Okay, so here it is. We want to marry the message you speak with your method of delivery. And this can really help adapt your speech to different situations. So marrying the message and the method, that's kind of a funny way to say it, but I think it will help as we talk about it, and hopefully it will clarify for you what it means, that the way you say things and what you say, when you bring those together, you have more effective communication. And this really helps both our speaking and our listening skills. So I think it would be helpful if I could demonstrate this. So this is the teacher do part. I'm going to demonstrate it for you. And then after I demonstrate it, I'm going to call on a few of you to practice out loud. Okay? So let's start here. We're going to use the phrase, yes, I will. Now, I didn't put any inflection or anything in that speech. In that phrase, I just said, yes, I will. All right, so let me illustrate the idea of marrying your message with your method. All right, I could say, yes, I will. That sounds positive and, like you want to do it. Or I could say, yes, I will. And that message is the same each time. Yes, I will. But the method is what's different. So this is important for you to practice with, because oftentimes the way we say things coupled with what we say is what really helps us to effectively speak and in turn listen to what other people are saying. So let's look at another phrase that this might work with. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Now, I could say, oh, wow. Or I could say, ugh, oh, wow. Now, that communicated very different messages, even though the actual words were the same. The way I communicated them meant something very different. Same thing with this phrase. I'm sorry. Now, you guys, I don't know if any of you have had your parents say, you did that to your brother, you need to tell him you're sorry, right? And you might say, I'm sorry. Right? It doesn't really communicate that you're sorry, but you did say the words, right? Or you could say, sorry. God, I'm really sorry. That communicates something different. Same message, but the method of delivery is a little different. So thinking about how we communicate using our words, our body language, the tone of our voice, all of those things make a difference in the way you adapt your speech for different circumstances. So we're going to practice a little bit. All right, I'm going to call on someone. Let's see. Elijah, last time we did a lesson like this, you seemed like you were understanding it pretty well. So I'm going to have you practice. So I'm going to give you control of the mic so other people can hear you. And I want you to practice out loud for us saying that first phrase, yes, I will. Say it first to your parents like you normally would. Okay? Okay. Yes, I will. Okay, that you sounded a little bit frustrated there. Sometimes you might be frustrated with your parents. Now say it to your driving instructor, someone that you're taking driver's ed from, and they've just told you to make a left-hand turn, right? And you're a little bit nervous about that, but how would you say that to someone that's doing something like that for you? Like you're driving with them and they're teaching you how to drive, and it's going to be really important that you pass that class because you really want your license. So how would you say it then? Good, good. Okay. Yes, I will. Yeah, of course. I'd be happy to make a right turn or a left turn or parallel park, any of those things. So, who you're talking to, the context of who you're talking to, who's present, right? You might adapt your speech based on that. How you talk to your parents or your little brother is going to be different than how you talk to your driving instructor. Okay, so there's an example. Now let's see who else is here. Hey, Gwen, if you're here. Let's take a look at that second phrase. Oh, wow. Now, say this phrase, you just got $200 in the mail, very unexpected gift. How are you going to say, oh, wow, to that? Yeah, you're right. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Good job, Gwyneth. That's what I would say, too, if somebody sent me $200. Now say, oh, wow, to your friend whose dog just died. Yeah, that's good. Oh, wow. Okay, that communicated something very different, right? Um, there's so many things that we can communicate with just a few words, and we adapt our speech based on what the situation is or what we might have heard. We're listening, right? What we might have heard somebody say to us, we adapt our speech appropriately, and this really helps us communicate better with people. Now I've got the last one there, I'm sorry. That's, again, a loaded one, as we talked about. Sometimes you can say I'm sorry and really mean it, and sometimes you can say I'm sorry and you don't mean it at all. In fact, you're only saying it because you're required to say it, okay? So let's take a look at some ways that you might be able to practice this. In fact, I think I'm going to give you a homework assignment, but let's take a look at the next slide. All right. This is what we've been talking about, that clear communication and speaking and listening, what you say and how you say it, makes a big difference in how clearly you communicate with others. So the concept of adapting your speech, thinking about the situation you're in, it's really a critical life skill. It's something you're going to practice your entire life. There's a lot of grown-ups walking around that are still struggling with this idea about how do I figure out how to say something, what to say, and how to say it, and how to do that together. All right. So this particular skill and this standard that we're working on learning is an important one for you for your life, no matter what situation you're in, no matter where you end up working or what you do, that kind of thing. So this is important. So let's take a look at how you could practice this at home. So this is your homework, because I want you, I talked about it, we worked on it together, but this is something that you can do. So I really want you to practice this, and then I want you to bring back what you did and share it with the group when we get back together. We're on a block schedule, so let's see, we'd be together again, it's Wednesday. So let's take a look at what the assignment is for that. All right, first part you're gonna do in your homework assignment is you're going to write down your favorite phrase, something that you often say to others, or maybe you say it to yourself. And it's like kind of your go-to phrase, what you normally would say if something is great or something's frustrating you, or it's just kind of your go-to phrase. I want you to write that down. So this is your assignment to practice. And then I want you to practice saying this phrase out loud to others. Let's use those emotions and your body language like we were practicing, and think about how does it change the message? If I have my phrase and I say that, how does it change if I change the inflection of my voice? Or I pay attention to who's around me and I might say it differently. Like maybe you have a little niece or nephew and you get down on the ground and you say, yes, I will play dolls with you, or yes, I will play Play-Doh or Legos, right? You might change that differently by even changing your body posture, right? And how do people respond differently to you when you do that? Maybe you try mixing it up without telling your mom and dad and try to sound really happy when you say, sure, I'll do that, instead of, yes, I'll do it. And see how people respond. I want you to record some of those responses. So that's the first part of your homework. The next part of your homework is, I want you to take that same phrase. I want you to write a text, like a pretend text that you would send to your friend using that phrase. And then I want you to take that phrase and I want you to write it in a job application letter. So the way, again, that we write something down or the way that we speak it, we're looking for how that changes a little bit for you. So I want you to think about that. Would you say that phrase differently if you were sitting across from your boss, right? Or if you're trying to apply for a job? How would you say that phrase differently than if you're sending a text or posting something on Instagram or whatever to one of your friends? So that's part of your assignment. And there's one more part to this assignment. Okay, I want you to find another phrase that communicates the same message. So we say, yes, I will is our phrase, our go-to phrase. We say, sure, I'll do that, or something that's a similar message, right? And then I want you to go through the same steps that we did above, see how that message changes when you use it instead of your go-to message. And again, I want you to write these things down. I think it will be helpful for us to talk about it and to see if you can identify ways that you adapted your speech in different circumstances. Okay, so this is your assignment. We'll meet again on Wednesday, and we'll talk about what it is that we learned. All right, everyone, have a great day. Now, this part of the lesson, since the students have already exited, would be what I would do as a special education teacher to help students really grasp the concepts. I like to make virtual and accessible lessons. So both of them, virtual and accessible, is important to partner together in the virtual environment, like what K12 offers for students. I have several teaching tools that I've used in the past when I've worked as an online teacher, and then things I've used since then. Even in the training that I've done for adults, I've used these kinds of tools. The chat box, you can ask people to respond or raise their hand or wave at you in the chat box. We can use breakout rooms. That's always helpful if you're taking a new concept that's a little bit more challenging, or you want the students to talk to each other. Breakout rooms can be really effective as long as you're structured in the way you do it. Or maybe you as a special ed teacher, you will go to the breakout room with the student and say, let's practice this, or let's talk about this more, or let's go over this assignment. I use a polling tool with my students. A lot of times it's helpful if you can break it down to a succinct question and then ask them to give their response to that question, and then use that as a teaching tool in working with students. Waterfalling answers. I actually learned this from my husband, who's an online teacher, where you get everyone to write their answers in the chat box, but not enter them until you say go, and then the answers just waterfall down in the chat. I've done this with adults as well, and people like to see the answers show up like that in a waterfall. So that's another fun way to reinforce ideas and to get students involved in the process, as well as seeing how their peers are responding. So that's important too. And then also role playing. In this case, I would do a role play with a student, especially a student that might be having trouble really understanding the concepts or understanding how to maybe modify the way they're doing things. I would practice with video and I would do some role playing with them. So these are some of the ways that I would adapt for students who might be having trouble getting the concepts, or students that might be part of my caseload that may have had difficulty just communicating in general. I would work on taking the concept and then finding different ways to approach it for a student. So this is today's lesson. Thanks so much for coming.